Hi, welcome to my accessible Tesla road trip. People buy Teslas for a lot of different reasons. Save the penguins, look cool, whatever. But in my case, I bought the Tesla primarily because I'm disabled and I've been trying to accommodate my disability while driving in a lot of different ways. I've got a spinal cord injury, which severely limits my use of my legs and even has a little bit of impact on my dexterity in my hands. So that's made some interesting challenges for driving. And for a while I wasn't sure whether I was going to be able to continue to drive at all. But as time went on, I found tools that helped me. Initially with my gas car, I started using hand controls. So I have a system where there are basically two attachments to the gas pedal and the brake pedal that I can control with my hands. And that works really well. I can push on a button with my thumb to change up the gas. I can use my palm to hit the brakes, and then my left hand is used for steering. But one of the challenges, as you might imagine with that, is with left hand steering, right hand doing gas and brake, there's not a lot of additional hands around to do simple things that you take for granted when you're driving. Take a drink of water, change the radio station, adjust the cruise control, play with your sunglasses. There's just a bunch of stuff that you can't do. And in town, it's not a big deal because you're hitting stoplights and other little interruptions that it doesn't matter that much that you don't have a free hand the whole time. But when you're doing a 10 or 12 hour road trip, as I am right now, that makes for a very long ride if you can't take a drink of water, or you got to wait till the next exit before you can scratch your eye or something like that. Yeah, that kind of sucks. So one of the cool things that I've really liked about the Tesla is having access to things like Autopilot and the traffic aware cruise control and some other tools like that that I'll touch on that have made driving a lot easier for me. Yes, I could do it with the gas car the old way, but I'm finding that the Tesla is significantly easier. And since I know there are people out there with a lot of disabilities, I wanted to share some of my experiences after having done several thousand miles in road trips like this in various 12-hour stints. So just wanted to kind of cover some of the advantages and disadvantages and quirks that I've found to driving a Tesla for accessibility reasons. I have a 2021 Model Y. It was one of the first units to come out after they had removed the radar function. So it's relying on the Tesla Vision. And overall, I'm very happy with my experience. The reason I bought the car was for the accessibility features. I have the full self-driving option purchased, which, while that is not full self-driving yet, I'm confident that that over time that it will get there. It was just a step in the right direction. But even in the interim, what I'm finding is that with Autopilot and some of the other capabilities of the car, it's a significant advantage over my prior driving experiences with a standard car. Some things that I really like, at a very basic level, the traffic aware cruise control is nice because it stages itself in traffic so that it adjusts based on the speeds of the cars that are in front of you. You can get that in some other cars right now, but when you add to that the Autopilot feature, which keeps you in the lane, the 360-degree visibility of the camera system, the speech, the voice commands for some of the key features of the car, it adds up to a pretty combined package that definitely benefits a driver that has accessibility challenges. So while there are improvements to be made, I think it's headed in the right direction. My take is right now that Autopilot is a good co-pilot autopilot combination. It's not, in my opinion, a chauffeur. I think if I were to close my eyes and go to sleep or read a book or something, I would be a real idiot because I have not seen that it's quite ready for that. But it has definitely made the driving experience significantly easier. There are some places where the car does virtually everything that's needed. Lane changes. It's really nice to be able to hit the turn signal and and know that the car is also looking out to see if there are people in the lane, or other obstacles in the lane that I want to get into. That is a really useful feature. Some of the navigate on autopilot, where it will automatically adjust to take ramps and exchanges and things like that it needs to for the route. That's also helpful. Just one less thing to fuss with, because you don't want to be trying to manage too many things when you're driving disabled. Every little bit that you can take on helps. So I find as a driver using the autopilot, my experience is something in between being the primary driver and being a passenger. There are times that I feel mostly like a passenger, and I can just keep an eye on the road and see what's going on. There are other times that I definitely need to take over and do things. So it's evolving over time. Whether it's a year, 2 years, 5 years, I don't know. I'm impressed with some of the things that Tesla has enabled to allow it to improve the self-driving capabilities over time. So I'm content to wait for that, but I'm very pleased with where it's at right now. A couple quirks that I have noticed just to adapt to. At present, my autopilot, when I was first using it, first driving with this, they had just made the change to remove the radar. In my opinion, that other than perhaps a very low visibility situation, I'm not sure that the radar was actually doing all that much. There have been some sequences on the road where I was in pouring rain and things like that, and that might have been an extra benefit. But again, just with the Tesla Vision, the car was driving about as fast as I thought that I should be driving in that kind of weather anyway. If I was a human driver, I would not have been going, on my own that much faster, if any. I think that the car makes reasonable decisions. I find that when I'm in an area of low traffic and there's not much going on, the car is pretty relaxed. The autopilot does a lot of things. It doesn't bother me that much with the steering nags. Keep your hand on the wheel, all that kind of stuff. Those nags have kind of gone down. When I'm in a high traffic situation, there are a lot of cars right around me. Summertime, I'm driving, there's cones on the road and construction and things like that. At those times, it's more needy, and it's wanting to make sure that I'm there. And I think that's appropriate. I felt pretty comfortable that the car, is context aware. I've also been impressed. There've been a few circumstances where somebody swerved in my direction, a truck was leaning out of its lane and bleeding into mine, and the car has made adaptations, whether it's shifting its position in the lane somewhat or taking a quick evasive maneuver in some cases, and that's been beneficial. Could I have done that as a human driver? Of course, I've been doing that for many years. But one of the nice things that I find with the autopilot is it's there as either as a primary or a backup control. If you're a human driver, you're not 100% focused all the time anyway. I mean, think about all the times that people get in a car wreck and it's because I was just playing with the radio for that 1 minute, or the pizza slid off my seat and was gonna hit the passenger floor and I just tried to grab it real quick and I crashed into the parked car, the sideswiped the thing next to me, whatever. There's usually some sort of surprise event that distracted a human driver. With the Tesla, there's at least some protection against that, and that makes it so that you've got a little bit of backup in the event that you are distracted momentarily. Then the car is there to hopefully pick up the slack, and vice versa. If the autopilot is not seeing something, I've seen examples of, look at where autopilot wasn't right about this. It would have not made this turn as well as it should have, or I don't know if it would have stopped for those cars in time. That's possible. Yes, there are times that Autopilot has missed the boat. And that's why I'm here as the driver with my hands on the wheel and my eyes on the road to take over. And right now that's the way it's supposed to be. So there are times Autopilot takes over for me. There are times I take over for Autopilot. And between the two of us, I think we have a safer driving experience and an easier driving experience than what I would have had without that. So that's that's a useful thing. There are a few little quirks that I think will evolve over time. Right now, Autopilot is in my car is limited to the 80 miles an hour, so I cannot go any faster than that. When I first got the car a few months ago, it was at 75 miles an hour was the limit, so it seems to have moved up a little bit. So is that a huge problem that it maxes out at 80 miles an hour? Generally, no. I mean, there are some times that I've been going in traffic that the average speed has been a little over 80, perhaps, from the cars around me, and so you don't like being in the lane where you're getting passed all the time or whatever. But on the other hand, it does extend the range, and also 80 miles an hour is breaking the speed limit, and in that regard, the Autopilot, it's watching for a lot of things, but to my knowledge, it's not watching for the cops sitting in the middle of the road with the radar gun or anything like that. It's maybe that's a future enhancement, that it will work with a radar detector and slow itself down. But as it is, I find that if I don't want to get a ticket, setting Autopilot to drive me at 90 miles an hour down the highway, even if it's possible to do that, might not be the greatest idea. So that's something to consider. Being a human driver, having that 80 mile an hour limit does have some practical benefits. There have been some strange things that Autopilot does that I think are a work in process. The phantom braking events, sometimes for reasons that are unclear, the car will suddenly start to slow down, sometimes somewhat aggressively. Whether it's seen a funny shadow pattern of light that it wasn't sure what that was. There was a bird got in its vision somewhere, a bug hit the cameras. I don't know. There may be 1,000 little things like that can trigger it. So that's still a work in process. I'd like to see that phantom braking issue go away. So yeah, just another little phantom braking episode there. I was going under a bridge and going to some shadows and things like that. That was a little weird, but at the same time, if the car is erring on the side of caution, that's a good thing. It wasn't an aggressive stop where I was worried about cars behind me or anything like that. It was just, okay. So I think that's a work in process that is evolving. One of the things that I've found with Autopilot, currently, it has an 80 mile an hour limit in my car for the automatic steering capacity. And what I have run into is if I've got that 80 mile an hour limit, it's been a good idea to set the cruise control to no higher than 78, because what I've found happens is that as I'm driving, if I've got the cruise control set at 80 miles an hour and I go down just even the slightest hill or something like that, well, I might suddenly be doing 81 miles an hour or something like that, and the car legitimately says, well, hey, that's faster than 80 miles an hour. That's not okay. I'm going to disengage and turn control back over to you. So that's fine, but it's following the rules that it set. But at the same time, that's not really what the experience that I was going for. So it's been better for me to set the cruise control at, say, 78 miles an hour if I wanted to do that, because then it will keep it even the chances that I'm going to go over 80 miles an hour while it's in the 78 mile an hour cruise control setting is pretty unlikely. So that's just been a more stable experience for me in terms of having Autopilot fuss at me or yelling at me to keep my hands on the wheel or something like that. There have been a couple times that I've been in Autopilot jail. It's gotten mad at me because it does not think my hands are on the wheel. I've kept my hands on the wheel the entire time, but if I have not put perhaps the right amount of weight on my hand or something like that, it's thought that I was not there, and it will give me an alert saying, keep your hands on the wheel, put a slight turning force on the wheel so that we know that you're there, and that's fine. But there are some times when that's been mistaken. My hands are on the wheel, and I'm like, dude, my hands on the wheel. I haven't taken anything off, and I'm still looking down the road. I can't figure out why it's grumpy with me. But then from time to time, it has put me in Autopilot jail, where it says that it's auto steer is not available for the duration of this trip. I'm in timeout. That's kind of a pain in the ass, because the only way that I've found to get out of Autopilot jail at this point is to stop at some next exit, put the car in park momentarily, and then resume my trip. Not a huge problem, but it is an inconvenience when you actually feel like you've been following all the rules. I'm sure it's well intended. Certainly would be the right thing to do if somebody was abusing the system, but in my cases, have not. So I'm not exactly sure what's up with that. But that's been a rarity. That's again, I've put in thousands of miles in this trip, many 10 and 12 hour legs of the journey, and for a random number of times that it's popped up, I would not say that it's been a major issue. It's just something that I've noticed. Another thing that I've really liked about the Tesla is the voice commands for key features. One of the things that I've used as some of my disability issues have gotten in the way of me typing and other things like that. I've used voice control software for my phone, for my computer, things like that. It helps quite a bit for some fine motor skill tasks. And the voice control has been quite useful for doing certain things, whether it's turning up the air conditioning. You can say I'm hot, I'm cold, I'm whatever, and it will adjust the climate without you having to fiddle around with temperature buttons, which is a safer experience. But that's still an area of growth, because there are some things that I have not yet figured out a way to automatically control. I was driving for a while, it was heavy rain, and people were turning on their hazard lights, and I found in that moment that I was not able to turn on the hazard lights with the voice commands. I had a passenger that was able to do it, so I didn't have to take my hands off the wheel, but that would have been an improvement, and I anticipate something like that might come over time. It doesn't seem like a big change to have it do that, but completing the controls that you can do with voice command would help. Another thing with voice commands that I would like is in my house, I've equipped it with the Google Home, Alexa type devices to turn on lights and things like that. I would like the ability to, just as I at home, I can say, okay, Google, lights 50%, or okay, Google, turn off the lights entirely. Since I cannot do that in the car right now, that's an area that I would like to see improved. I would love to be able to say, okay, Tesla, turn on the lights. Okay, Mr. Musk, please turn on the air conditioning. Something like that would be an improvement, and that's good for everybody. I can't imagine that's a problem that's limited to disabled drivers alone. Any driver would be able to benefit from that. Another addition that I think would be helpful for accessibility is to have an accessibility mode for the touchscreen. Many of the buttons that are on the touchscreen are relatively small. If you're disabled and you've got some dexterity issues in your fingers, or you're just trying to drive and it's a small button to hit, you know, it would be nice if there was a way that you could make the button bigger or change the visual contrast or otherwise make minor modifications in the same way that you can do for most phones and computers. I don't think it's a big change. I noticed, you know, that my Tesla has a thing called Joe mode, which I believe turns down some of the sounds so that it maybe would not wake a sleeping child in the back. That's a great thing, but I would like to have an accessible mode that you could change some of the settings of the touchscreen to make them that much more usable for people that maybe had a dexterity or visual issue of some kind. So just minor modifications, but I don't think it would be a huge change. That's one of the beauties of having a touchscreen as opposed to the hard physical buttons. You know, if in my older gas car, you know, if I wanted to have accessibility mode, I was going to have to get a drill and pliers to be changing buttons around and things like that. That's not going to be a thing. But in a touchscreen like this, why not? It's a software tweak that would make the car that much better. Other features that I found that I like, all the power and automation accessories, the doors, the lights, the charging door, things like that. Not unique to Tesla, but it does contribute to the overall experience. The ease of entry features that adapt where the seat placement is and putting the steering wheel out of the way when you're trying to enter and exit the vehicle. That's also very helpful if you're trying to transfer in and out of a car. You know, I'm not a full-time wheelchair user, so I'm not usually, in my case, going from a wheelchair to the driver's seat. But even with canes and crutches and things like that, you know, it's a big deal. All right, so I've stopped into Supercharger in Knoxville, Tennessee. It's a few hours into the journey here, so it's just a quick pit stop to recharge. This is a pretty good Supercharger location, but there are some issues with it. As you find with a lot of Superchargers, there's not a ton of stuff that's close at hand here. So if you can see around, you know, you got a little bit of distance between you and the closest food source, bathroom source, what have you, which is normally not a huge issue, you know, but if you're disabled, that does add a wrinkle, because, you know, normally we get to a blue spot, we're close to the door because, hey, we're disabled and then we move slow, you might need a wheelchair. I'm on a cane today. But there's no blue spots out here. This is like the anti-blue spot. This is the spot at the farthest end of the parking lot, and they tend to be that way. So, you know, I'm grateful that they're here. That is definitely, you know, a huge advantage if you have an electric car. Tesla's major advantage that you've got this outstanding supercharger network. So that's one of the things to consider if you're disabled and you're trying to get around the world and you're doing it in a Tesla, to just be aware that, you know, if you stop off to charge, you may need to make some planning for food and bathrooms before you charge, which is kind of unfortunate because ideally you'd like to charge and run off and go to the bathroom, get something to eat and come back and your car's all done. You know, on a long highway trip, that's kind of a wash. Then you're not really taking any time out of the trip. It's not extending it because charging just overlaps with bathroom visits and food that you would have done in a gas car. It doesn't break even. But, you know, if you have to do it in serial as opposed to parallel, like I just outlined, then it does add a little bit of wrinkle. You know, I had seen somebody in another Tesla Supercharger location standing out, you know, in it was kind of at the back of a field and not really around, and I looked over and I realized the guy was peeing next to the Supercharger. I'm just saying, I think that might be an electrocution hazard. I'm not going to take the risk of all that voltage going where it's not supposed to. I think I will wait and
you know, and find a proper bathroom. But hey, you do you. You know, whatever, you know, that is the big breakthrough. Like, you know, Peter Parker got bit by a radioactive spider, turned into Spider-Man. If you get shocked, you know, by the supercharger while you're peeing, who knows what the hell might happen to you. You might be a superhero we'll hear about soon, but that's just speculation. This is my second electric vehicle that I keep in the back of the Tesla. You know, and it's a power wheelchair that folds, and I can get this out, and if I did need to power my way across a large parking lot, and I was not able to walk, this gives me some alternatives. So it's you know, it's just kind of a unique thing. Some people have wheelchairs that are mounted on a little rack behind their car, but since this one folds, and also because the height of the deck from the curb to the deck is actually about 6 or 8 inches lower than what I had in my previous gas car. You know, even though the wheelchair is kind of heavy, it's just that much less distance to travel and lift. So that's all good. All right, the accessible Tesla road trip continues. It's about 10 o'clock at night at the Supercharger location. I've been here many times, mostly in the daytime, but this does kind of illustrate some of the issues if you're out at night at a Supercharger. There's not necessarily a whole lot going on. There's a McDonald's here, but right now the drive-through is the only thing that's open. You know, so I think you run into various issues there. You know, if you need to go to the bathroom or something like that, it's not going to happen right now. So I think that's kind of one of the issues that I think needs to be resolved eventually with Supercharger locations. Is unlike a gas station where you know, you've got a lot of bright lights and facilities that are open at all times, Superchargers are still kind of a standalone thing, and so it's great when you've got the support of open stores and restaurants nearby and things like that. Less great if you're out in the middle of the night at one of these charger locations. And again, you know, I feel secure here because there's stuff going on around, but you know, give it 2 or 3 hours and it might be kind of lonely. So again, I'm grateful that we've got the Supercharger network that we have. You know, asking for a roof overhead so that I could be charging up without rain or snow on me or something like that, I think is a useful improvement as time goes on, but you know, one step at a time. I hope you found this video on Tesla accessibility helpful. If you did and you'd like to see more content on accessibility, please click the like and subscribe button, and I hope to see you here again soon. Thanks.